Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Golden State Warriors claim an incredible victory, an overtime win against the Houston Rockets, 127-121. Welcome to those of you that are in the stream, and if you'd like to provide your comments, your thoughts regarding this game, what you like, what you didn't like, there's so much to unpack from this. I'll read your comments out on the live stream. Where to start? An unbelievable game, an absolute roller coaster. I tweeted out, I think I've lost 10 years off my life watching that game. But that is the beauty of sport. It's why I love sport so much. The roller coaster just within one game. If you go back to the first half, I mean, I could not believe the Warriors could play that well without Steph Curry with what they did in the first half. It was a flawless performance. They built a 31-point lead. They were doing it on both ends of the floor. They ultimately led by 28 at halftime, 71-43. They were knocking down everything, not only knocking down threes, but getting to the rim as well, getting to the free throw line, which was a bit of a negative talking point, but we'll get to that. It was, again, I just could not believe they could play that well without Steph. And then the second half, I thought the third quarter was okay until kind of the end of it. Like Houston started hitting some shots. There's a couple of turnovers late in the period where you're like, okay, that's not ideal. But the Warriors still go in with a 16-point lead entering the fourth quarter. And you think, okay, it's still comfortable enough. And then very quickly, the lead is eroded. Houston came back, and within the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, the game was tied. And you're just sitting here stunned. And to be fair, I think the Rockets played excellent, especially early in that fourth quarter. Like, they were absolutely unreal. The Warriors didn't help themselves with the missed free throws and some untimely turnovers. But I do want to give Houston some credit. Like, they legitimately played very well and kind of deserved to cut into the margin. Not necessarily in the way they did that much. I mean, no team should, you shouldn't be letting a team come back from 31 points down ever. But Houston certainly, made the most of their opportunity. There's no doubt about that. And then, I mean, the Warriors did well to steady themselves. I thought it showed some maturity to steady themselves, not let themselves be overrun by the Rockets or the home crowd, which had obviously got into the game. The Warriors got themselves back up. They're up 5 with 20 seconds left, and then they should have been up by more. Again, missed free throws from both Draymond and Pods in the last minute there. Then Jabari Smith Jr. hits a 3 with 19 seconds left, cuts the lead to 2. You think, okay, surely the Warriors can inbound the ball, and they're still going to be in a good position here. They take a timeout, which after Pods dribbles the ball around a bit in the backcourt, which means they cannot take the ball past half court after the timeout. And then Draymond's left with an awkward pass, which, I mean, it's no excuse. He should have still found a teammate. Throws it, I think it was over Wiggins' head. Houston get the turnover. Wiggins ends up fouling Tari Eason goes to the line after missing 2 free throws shortly beforehand. He knocks down 2 clutch ones. He played really well in this one. And then Buddy Hield dribbles the ball up the floor and then falls over, and they don't even get a shot up. So the game goes to overtime. And, I mean, the rest is history with Jonathan Kuminga, right? A clutch performance from him, 6 of Golden State's 8 points. And Draymond fouled out towards the end of regulation or was it start of overtime, either or. Brandon Pajemski also fouled out at the start of overtime in the first couple of minutes there. And Steve lent defense heavy. Kyle Anderson was out there. Loon was out there. Kuminga was out there. Wiggins at the 2 again was out there. And Buddy Hield was the other player out there as well, I think, during that overtime period. So the Warriors lent heavy on defense and kept Houston to 2 points, a couple of uncharacteristic misses from the Rockets, particularly Jalen Green, who had an absolute nightmare of a game. I'm somewhat surprised that Ime Udoka went back to him as much as he did. Him and Alperen Şengün, which, were, I thought, are two of the biggest factors offensively for the Rockets. They had very little to no to negative impact on this game from a Rockets standpoint. But the Warriors end up getting the clutch victory. They tried to lose it. It would have been, they staved off not only Houston, but also franchise history, because that would have been the biggest margin that any team had ever come back from against them in franchise history during the regular season. Now, they had a 31-point lead against the Clippers, remember, in that playoff series in 2019, where the Clippers came back and won. That's the biggest margin any team has ever come back from against the Warriors, but no team has done it by more than 30 points in the regular season. So that would have been some pretty bad franchise history if Houston had completed that comeback. And to be totally honest, that's what it looked like with 7 minutes to go. That's what it looked like heading into overtime. It looked like a Warrior loss waiting to happen. And so as I think and recap this game, I almost feel this sounds weird. I almost feel weirdly better about how this game played out as opposed to the Warriors just, taking care of business and winning by 20. Now, would have I preferred that in the moment? Absolutely. But I think it's actually good that this team went through something like this and came out the other side of it with a win. And I think it showed a maturity without Steph, without Draymond in overtime. To pull that out, I think is really impressive. And so you can look back and you can be really happy and positive about the first half. And you can also be, a little bit disappointed with the second half, but also positive and optimistic about how the Warriors were able to pull that out when all the momentum was against them. I thought it was actually really impressive. That's a game they lose last season. In a similar situation last season, how many times did we see it? Blown leads, team comes back, Warriors kind of fall over, and that's it. They lose that game. So I thought it showed some real maturity. Just going to get to some of your comments here. GSW, one of the most stressful games I've ever seen, not going to lie. I mean, the range of emotions there, I couldn't help but laugh by the end of it. I was just like, what are we watching here? It was just an extraordinary game. Like the missed free throws, Warriors missed 18. Should have closed it out in regulation if they just nailed some more free throws. The turnovers, they barely turned the ball over in the first half. I mean, they were almost perfect offensively. Couldn't have got much better, aside from even missing some free throws in the first half. The second half, a lot more turnovers. And yes, they only finished with 14 in the end, which is a good number for the Warriors, particularly, playing the extra 5 minutes in overtime. But some really untimely turnovers, like Buddy Hield dribbling the ball up the floor a couple of times, losing it. And I don't know, just, I don't know. As I said in my Twitter post, like, just felt like I aged 10 years watching that game. I just had to laugh by the end of it because the roller coaster of sport is amazing. This is why we follow it and we love it. Raymond Lyon says it was ridiculous how they stopped pressing on defense in the second half. They stopped trapping and gang rebounding. I don't think I've ever seen a Warriors game where we missed that many free throws. Yeah, I mean, most Warrior games, obviously, over the last 15 years have included Steph Curry. And when you get in trouble down the stretch, now Steph, in fairness, has had his history of throwing the ball away carelessly at moments late in games. He has had a history of that. But he also, you give the ball to him, he gets fouled, he's knocking down 2 free throws, right? And you don't have to worry about that. Like some of these at the end where Wiggins is going to the line, Draymond's going to the line, Pods is going to the line. I'm like, okay, can we at least make one of these? Like, I'm not actually confident about them, and Clay was also here, like, to be fair. And late in games, he could throw in the ball and he's knocking down 2 free throws. So the Warriors, I mean, do they have like a really good free throw? Like Buddy Hield is obviously a really good free throw shooter, but if Buddy Hield's kind of trapped, I feel a bit nervous. And if he has to put the ball on the floor, I feel a bit nervous. So even then, it's like, do we want to throw the ball for him to free throws? They didn't really do that. I thought Houston probably did a good job of picking, like they had a play that when Draymond missed his 2 free throws, I think Houston were really good and switched on. And, Draymond got the ball and they fouled straight away to make sure he was the one taking them. So I don't know. JSW, any clue when Steph's back? Well, it sounds pretty positive. It sounds like he practiced before this game today in Houston. And there's a chance, I think, that he might be back Monday against Washington. Now, the way this team is playing, they're now 3-0 without Steph, and they're beating a couple of good teams. The Pelicans are a decent team, albeit they've got injuries themselves. And a Rockets team, I mean, they just beat the Mavericks by 6 on their home floor, and most see the Mavericks as a top 4 or 5 team in the West. I mean, they literally came out of the West last season as NBA finalists. So to win that game, if you just said to me at the start of the game, the Warriors are going to win this game by 6, I would have been incredibly happy and would have been like, I don't care if we win by 1, 6, 20, whatever it is, fantastic. And I still feel like that. I still feel really happy about the result, but the roller coaster within it is, it was remarkable and hardly believable, really. But hopefully Steph might be back on Monday. But again, the way this team's playing, you'd think that you might be able to take care of the Wizards and Jordan Poole without. Jordan Poole's playing really well at the moment, so credit to him. He's been electric offensively to to start this season and led them to a couple of wins against Atlanta, I think, most recently. They're actually playing at the moment against Miami. They're currently down 19, so unlikely to win that game. But JP's been a bit of a threat there without Kyle Kuzma now, who's injured. You'd imagine, like, Steph or no Steph, the Warriors would be favourite for that game. Now, if Steph's right to go, he's right to go, and you play him. But otherwise, rest him up. You've got those 3 games against Boston, Cleveland, Oklahoma City, which are going to be tough. But the Warriors, at least now, 5-1, have given themselves some buffer, where if you can beat the Wizards on Monday, you move to 6-1. Even if you lose 3 straight games from there against 3 opponents you will go in underdogs against, then at least you're still 6-4 after 10 games, and that's fine. That's more than reasonable, right? And maybe you can pinch one of those, and if you go in 7-3 after 10 games, that's exceptional. That's fantastic. So really, I mean, this was a crucial game for the Warriors to try and take, given the schedule they've got upcoming after the Wizards game. And so to get this win, particularly after it looked very dire there with the Rockets comeback and all the momentum against them, that's impressive. That's a game they lose last season. 6A, 6Y family says maybe in the end of the third quarter, Kerr should have subbed back in the starting lineup because they were solid in both offense and defense. Yeah, I mean, I thought everyone, had a pretty good game. It was just another team performance from the Warriors, really, and their bench unit did step up. Buddy Hield led the way again with 27 points, 9 of 14 shooting, 6 of 10 from three-point range. I did find it funny that Ime Udoka was kind of pouring ultimate praise on Buddy Hield before the game, saying he's another Klay Thompson, the way he's moving without the ball and stuff like that. And, clearly honed in on Buddy Hield and what he's been doing, and yet let Buddy Hield come out and have 14 points on 5-5 shooting in the first half. So Buddy was really good. Again, sometimes when he's dribbling the ball, I get a little bit nervous and I'm like, please just give it off to a more secure ball handler. But that's part of the issue at the moment for the Warriors is in that overtime, Steph's not playing, D'Anthony Melton's not playing, Draymond fouls out, Pods fouls out. Kyle Anderson was the point guard, essentially. And then their offense was really trying to get Kuminga in transition, which I thought JK had an excellent game. Like, this is 3 straight games now off the bench where he has been really, really good. And this was his best one, 23 points, 7 of 12 shooting, knocked down 2 of his 3 threes, which that's great. The fact he took 3 3-point attempts out of his 12 field goal attempts, that's kind of the perfect ratio. He should be getting inside to the rim 3 out of every 4 field goal attempts, right? 7 of 10 from the free throw line, left a couple there, but not too bad. 6 rebounds, a game high plus 18 as well, which is the biggest thing. And the fact that he could be your go-to guy, this is what we want from Jonathan Kuminga. We want this guy to be a go-to scorer, and that's what he was for the Warriors in overtime and throughout the game as well. Like, there were times he gets a mismatch, whether it's on Jalen Green, Van Vliet, any of the kind of smaller Rockets players. He took advantage, right? He says, give me the ball in the post, let me go to work. And he came up with some clutch buckets. So really, really excellent performance from Jonathan Kuminga. But another 6 Warriors in double figures with Wiggins going for 15. Wiggins, of course, returning after a 2-game absence with that back strain. I thought he was really good early. Knocked down a couple of threes, knocked down a little midi, looked really good. Again, only finishes with 15 points in 31 minutes, but I liked his aggressiveness. He had a bit of a slight injury concern in that fourth quarter as well. I'm not sure if that hampered him at all, but I just liked his aggressiveness. He got to the free throw line another 10 times. Again, only made 7. Again, it's okay, but when the Warriors only shoot 64% from the line overall, that's not ideal. But I thought he was good. He looked good again, and so this is continuing on an impressive start to the season for Wiggs outside of missing those 2 games. Draymond had a double-double, 14-11, 3 assists before fouling out. Pods, 12, 5, and 6. Pods is weird. He had some clutch buckets. And when Pods posts up, I'm just like, really? Like, this is our offense? Brandon Podziemski post up? This doesn't look great. And then he, uses his footwork, and then he hit a fadeaway jumper from the mid-range, and then he I think it was Aman Thompson where he kind of steps through on him and gets a layup to go. I'm like, okay, well, that works. And so he's a really, because his scoring is still 5'11", can't hit a 3 at the moment. He's, less than 10% now from 3-point range. That's a concern. And also, I feel like he dribbles the hell out of the ball a little bit too much. there's sometimes where he's just really pounding the ball, and I'm like, this is not really Warrior offense. Like, okay, get into a play here, get into a set and run something rather than just pods, literally just dribbling around the perimeter and dribbling into the lane, then out of the lane, doing all this different stuff. It's like, really? Anyway, I thought he was still solid again before fouling out. It was a weird game because, like, you look at some of the numbers minutes-wise, like, if you'd asked me that, if you told me before the game that Şengün played less than 21 minutes in an overtime game, I'd be like, what? Like 14 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, double-double, and then Ime Udoka just completely went away from him. And then he went back to Jalen Green. Jalen Green finished with this is a guy, remembering, averaging over 28 points on over 43% from three-point range coming into this game. He goes for 7 points on 2 of 13 shooting, 1 of 5. And it had a turnover as well, 4 personal fouls. I'm surprised they went back to him. I would have, like, if I was Ime Udoka, I wouldn't have gone back to Jalen Green. I would have been like, all right, it's Van Vliet, it's Jabari Smith, it's Dylan Brooks, it's Tyrese, and it's Aman Thompson. They're our guys, right? And just ran with that. Albeit, I know Brooks fouled out in the end, and he wasn't great himself, 3 of 9 shooting, 7 points. But, weird game. Like, TJD only plays 12 and a half minutes. I'm sure that was partly because of Şengün not coming back on the floor. Just a weird game. Anyway, getting back to your comments. Raymond Lyon says, I've been watching the Warriors for a long time, and I like to watch 2 Warriors YouTubers, and you're one of them. I like you're super realistic. You don't overestimate. Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, as I said on last post-game live, I think it was, I don't, I like to keep level-headed. I like to evaluate sport for what it is. I'm a Warrior fan, and I'm always going to be a Warrior fan, and that's always going to bring some bias out. There's no doubt about that. But I'm also acutely aware that it's an 82-game season. The Warriors are 5-1. We have to remember they started 5-1 last season. They were 5-1 last season after 6 games. So this is the identical point they were at last season. And we know what happened from there. They were 5-1. They were then 6-2. They then lost 6 straight games. Within that, Draymond got suspended for his chokehold on Rudy Gobert, and things just fell apart. They were 6-2. They went to 6-8. They hovered around. They eventually 19-24 after 43 games. They had a really good back half of the season, but that first half, and particularly that stretch, losing 6 straight games, that cost them. And so looking into this 5-game road trip, the Warriors had to make sure they don't have to win every game. They're not expected to win every game, but they need to win at least 2 or 3 of them, I think. And to win this one is a huge step towards that. And so I am acutely aware it's a long season, and the Warriors were in a very similar spot last season in terms of being 5-1 after 6 games, and it didn't work out too well by the end of it. And so I don't like to get too up and too, like, overreactionary in terms of, this team can win a championship. We're 5-1. No, like, it's a process, and we'll wait and see what happens. It's a very positive start, no doubt about that. But you have a couple of losses in a row, and things can very quickly turn. And so I don't like to, there's an old adage. I'm not sure if it's an American one or if it's just an Australian one, but there's an old adage of you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. The reality is somewhere in between, right? And so are the Warriors, as good as 5-1 right now? Is that going to translate over the course of an entire season? Are they going to win 60+ games? No, they're not, right? But it's a great start nonetheless. Raymond also says, estimate the littlest good things, but you're not super negative. Thanks for making content. Don't stop. Appreciate it. Winston says, credit the Rockets for amping up their intensity in the second half. Rockets made the comeback happen through their relentless D and crashing the offensive glass. Yep, absolutely agree with that. The defensive pressure from both teams kind of flipped from the first half to the second half, and the Rockets, again, you look at the Warriors and they only have 14 turnovers. It just felt a lot more than that because Houston were really rushing them in the second half and forcing some untimely ones where, it nearly cost the Warriors. That was, you look at the game, you think 14 turnovers, that wasn't an issue, but it kind of was in the fourth quarter there. And the offensive rebounding as well, 18 offensive rebounds to Houston, just 9 for the Warriors. So that was another huge factor, as Winston points out. Kevin McLean says, executing against ball pressure is all they should work on next 10 practices. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's difficult. Like, I spoke about a lot during the off season, the lack of point guard depth on the roster. I mean, when Pods and Draymond were both both fouled out there early in overtime. I thought, oh, geez, Pat Spencer, welcome. Like, any chance? Because he was the only other point guard option, like right on the roster behind Pods. Now that was never going to happen, and they went to Kyle Anderson in the end. Really, as their point guard. Now he's not a point guard as such, but he can handle the ball a little bit. And you do I feel safe with the ball in his hands, and I do like Buddy Hield and even like Kuminga to an extent. Like there was a play there where Kuminga late in overtime, I think it was, like brought the ball up to the floor and then looked for someone, just carelessly threw the ball away. So this is the issue. There's not actually too many point guards on the roster. It's something I've been reiterating across the course of the offseason. And with Steph out, it's like Pods, and Pods is young and inexperienced. Like he's a second-year guy. He doesn't have really any experience running an NBA offense. And I think he's doing a really good job at the moment. I think he's doing fantastic, given that lack of experience. And to be the starting point guard and for the team to be 3-0, that's exceptional. But he's still young and inexperienced. He's going to make mistakes. And so, you say executing against ball pressure is all they should work on. Well, I agree with that, but it's also a personnel issue as well. And it's also, we have a history of the Warriors where they do turn the ball over fairly carelessly, it must be said. Winton says Steph should be back, could be back on Monday. Yep, let's hope so. Evan Samir says, why did Kerr bench Moody? It doesn't make sense. He has to learn to trust talent. Yeah, so Moody plays 16 and nearly 17 minutes, 9 points, 2 assists, 2 of 2 from three-point range, 3 of 5 at the free throw line. I mean, I thought he played okay, but yeah, he went away from him. I don't know. I feel like he thinks his decision making is not up to par necessarily, and he's kind of like, I don't know. He's a good offensive player and he's a good defensive player, but he's not elite on either end of the floor necessarily. And so when you're trying to mix and match offense and defense there in the fourth quarter, you're trying to get, like, you've got the offense of Buddy Hield and Jonathan Kuminga to try and like prop up the scoring, but you're balancing that out with the defense of Looney and then, Draymond before he fouled out and Kyle Anderson. And so, and Wiggins is that two-way player that I suppose is in the Moody spot really, but Wiggins is just a more complete player on both ends. So yeah, it's weird that Moody would only play 16, nearly 17 minutes in this game after starting, but I can kind of understand it as well. Back to your comments. Anema King says we need to show some love to Kuminga. Yeah, I mean, it was an anxious period there before that first Pelicans game, where you hear that he's coming off the bench and you just think, like, which way is this? Is this going to go sideways? Is this going to go south rather quickly? I saw tweets out like over under 48 hours before Kuminga requests a trade, all this kind of stuff. And I think that's, again, a bit of an overreaction, but we've been through this so many times where you can't help but feel pretty pessimistic about the situation. But I couldn't have been more impressed with the way JK's responded to this. I think 17 and 16 points in the 2 games against the Pelicans, a season high 23 in this one, and just getting it done in the crucial moments as well. Big learning experience for him. So to be able to have this learning experience for a bunch of the young players and to be able to get through this and also win the game I think is huge. So credit to JK. He's responded from a quiet start with 3 really strong games. I'm still super interested to see what happens with him long term, because ultimately, as a restricted free agent and probably wanting $30+ million next offseason, like, the Warriors are going to want to know whether he's a guaranteed starter or not by the end of the season. And so therefore, I think it's something they need to go back to, but it's also going to be difficult to change something that's clearly working in terms of him coming off the bench. And credit to him for being able to do that and showing some maturity, which I think Draymond has already said in his post-game press conference, talking about, not only how well JK has played, but the maturity to accept that bench role and thrive since as well. What else have we got here? Bree CS says we got it done. She also agrees with Evan. Moody must play more. Yeah, I mean, it's only going to get tighter once Steph and Melton come back as well. I mean, is Steve going to go back to this 12-man rotation? Lindy Waters III is the 13th, and again, he played over 17 minutes today, 1 of 4. Didn't have a whole lot of impact. So, I mean, he had that 21-point performance a couple of games ago, but his last 2 haven't been that impactful. So he's probably going to be straight out again, you'd imagine, if when Steph returns, which hopefully will be Monday. Melton will be back He's got another couple of games off here. They mentioned on Friday that he would be reevaluated in 1 week. So he's got at least another 2 games off, and we'll wait and see there, which means Moody will probably still be in the lineup. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the starters. Does Moody remain in the starting lineup, and do they go Steph, Moody, Wiggins, Draymond, TJD? When Steph returns, do they go back to trying Kuminga at the 3, Wiggins at the 2? The weird thing for me is, and why I think they should probably try and go back to what the starting lineup was to start the season, is because Kuminga's still playing a lot of 3 in these lineups. Like, he's playing out there with Slow-Mo and Loon, or Draymond and Loon, or more so like Draymond and Slow-Mo. Like, a lot of these lineups, he's still playing the small forward spot. And I've actually been impressed that he's still playing the small forward spot for a lot of these minutes. And his mindset, I think, has just shifted significantly between the first 3 games and the last 3 games. In terms of the first 3 games, he was just trying to be like a spacing threat, but trying to be just a pure shooter. And taking, was it that, what was the third game? The Clippers game where we lost, where he's like 6 of his 10 field goal attempts were from 3. Just not a good ratio whatsoever. And so I think the last 3 games, his mindset has shifted significantly from being, I'm not going to be a bit part role player sitting on the wing waiting for a wing 3 attempt. No, I'm going to get the ball. I'm going downhill, and I'm using my athletic traits and my size to bully opponents. And that's what we've seen over the last 3 games. And I think it's fantastic. Drew says, who was the primary defender on Jalen Green? Did they even have one? Like, Wiggins, I suppose, to start out, you'd say but there was a lot of switching and stuff going on. Jalen Green just missed some shots. Like, he had that reverse layup in overtime, which he would make 99 times out of 100, and it just rimmed off. Just not a good game for him. And I mean, that's probably fair enough. He's a young player, 4th year. He's going to have ups and downs, as every player does. And he's had a strong start to the season. So I wouldn't be too concerned if I was a Rocket fan, but it probably cost you this game. Jalen Green makes a few more shots, you win the game. So Raymond Lyons says, what do you think about the news that the Warriors are open to trading Kuminga more than ever? Yeah, I responded to that on a podcast episode yesterday. If you haven't checked that out already, please do, either on your podcast feed or here on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, it's not like, I think it's always been the case that if like a genuine bona fide multi-time all-star becomes available, that Jonathan Kuminga will be available in such a scenario. Like, the Warriors will be willing to sacrifice Kuminga. It sounds like they were willing to do that for marketing in the offseason. And like, it makes sense, but I think it only makes sense for the absolute right player. And that doesn't mean the Warriors are actively shopping him. It just means that, okay, if we can pair Steph with a guy who is a bona fide all-star, who's in the kind of right age bracket, reasonable contract, I mean, if you're going to get a star, they're obviously going to be on max money. But a guy like Jimmy Butler, for example, I wouldn't be trading Wiggins and Kuminga for Jimmy Butler right now. I just think Wiggins is playing too well. Kuminga's still too much of a talent. You'd have to throw in other salaries like GP2 and Loon, who are playing well. Like, I just wouldn't make that trade right now. Now, if Giannis becomes available tomorrow, yeah, sure. Wiggins, Kuminga, Pods, whatever else to get Giannis, sure. But I don't know. Like, it's got to be the perfect player kind of thing to get off Kuminga. And the other thing right now is his value's deteriorated, because teams understand that if they trade for him and they want his value, then, that they get from that trade for, they send out a star or whatever, then they're going to have to retain Kuminga long-term. They're going to have to re-sign him in free agency on a big long-term deal, probably 5 years in excess of $150 million. And given we're not entirely sure whether or not he's worth that at this stage, that's a risk for a team to take, and therefore that lowers his trade value. So as much as the Warriors might be more, might be willing to sacrifice him and trade him for a star player, whether that star player becomes available first and foremost, and secondly, who says the Miami Heat would have interest in Kuminga and re-signing him for over $30 million a year? Who says the Bucks, if they were willing to give up Giannis, would be wanting Kuminga, re-signing him on over $30 million? So, yeah, I mean, I actually still struggle to see something happening, and I think it's because the Warriors have kind of cornered themselves into a bit of a tight spot here, where they need to decide on Kuminga, but the options are kind of running out, because I don't think he has the trade value that he did, even if we're talking about this time 12 months ago or late last season as well, where he had that bright spot in the second half of last season. Other than that, if you've got any more comments, then let me know. I'll probably finish it up here in a second. We've got the Wizards on Monday. They are about to lose this game to the Heat. They're down 118-96 with 47 seconds left. A couple of good results for the Warriors today as well. The Kings losing in Toronto. That's a bit of a shock in overtime as well. And Minnesota losing by 10 to the Spurs. Let me just check out that game. Just having a look here. So I didn't obviously watching the Warriors game, so I didn't check this out at all. Randall and Edwards both had 21. Dante 14 off the bench. But yeah, they go down by 10 to a Spurs team who got 25 from Keldon Johnson. That's a bit of a surprise. Wemby had 17, 6, 3, a steal and 2 blocks. Not a huge Wemby game by any means. Former Warrior Harrison Barnes had 14. So the Timberwolves and the Kings both losing is quite helpful for the Warriors. And if you are a Warrior fan and you are interested in Giannis Antetokounmpo, then you'd be very happy to hear that the Bucks blew a 16-point lead to the Cavs and lost by 1. So they are having an absolute treacherous time at the moment. Swalmo says, I still can't trust Buddy. I can't trust him when he's handling the ball. Now, in fantasy, he's actually made some actual reasonable plays this season, actually going to the rim, and I've been surprised by a couple of his plays off the drill. But there's other players where you're just like, okay, like just be a catch and shoot threat. Just be Clay. Like it's exactly like Clay in the last couple of years. When once Clay puts the ball on the floor, you're like, not really liking where this is going. But he can still be an exceptional catch and shoot threat. I had a mate message me during that first half, during the second quarter, where Buddy was going off 14 points, 5 of 5 shooting, and he said, Buddy's much better than Clay. And I was like, I'm not ready to say that. I'm not saying Buddy Hield's better than Clay Thompson until I see a full season of data, because I'm very hopeful that this is something new for Buddy, but I'm also very aware of all the old, the ex fans in terms of Philly fans, Pacer fans, Kings fans, whatever else, who kind of say that Buddy can have a hot stretch to start and then can cool off quite a bit. Swalmo says, any competent defense has stifled Buddy, and once Houston picked up their D, we saw it again. I mean, in fairness to him, now, a few of these were free throws, some technical fouls and stuff like that, but he did have 13 points in the second half, and he still finished with 27 on 9 of 14 shooting. I mean, that's a seriously good game. Buddy's a much better handler, playmaker than Clay or Kuminga. I don't think you want either of them. Obviously, Clay's not on the team anymore, but I think over the last couple of years, and all of them as players right now, you don't want any of them handling the ball that much. And Kuminga, you don't want him bringing up the ball. If you're going to put the ball in his hands, you try and get him in the mid-post area, give him the ball, then you let him go to work. And he can be a playmaker from there. And mainly more so just looking for his own scoring in isolation situations, because he can bully opponents. He really can. And so that's when you give the ball to Kuminga and let him do his work off the dribble, rather than, he shouldn't be bringing the ball up the floor necessarily. Like it can get a bit sticky in those situations. So other than that, Warriors, Wizards on Monday, followed by the Celtics, Cavs, and Thunder, who the Warriors could go top of the West if the Thunder lose this game to the Clippers, of which they're currently down 3 early in the early in the second half, I should say. Denver currently leading Utah by 24, so they will get a win there after falling to Minnesota yesterday. Just going to check the standings right now. Hopefully they've updated, because the Warriors could be could be equal top with the Thunder if the Thunder lose. So the Thunder are 5-0, the Warriors are 5-1. The Suns are 4-1. They could go. Are they playing right now? I think they are. They're playing the Trailblazers. You expect them to go 5-1 as well. The Lakers are 4-2. The Mavericks are 3-2. Grizzlies 4-3. Spurs, Houston, Minnesota, Sacramento, New Orleans, all 3-3. It's going to be that kind of season in the West, right? And so the more the Warriors can, stay a few games above 500, the better. I mean, you're going to have to win. We saw the Warriors win 46 games last year and still missed out on the playoffs. You're going to have to win 50. You're going to have to win 50 to ensure you finish as a top 6 seed, I would imagine. Fancy Pants Dancer says, Buddy has a huge positive influence in the locker room. Clay did not, especially last season. That alone means a lot. You know what? I kind of agree. I actually kind of agree with you. I mean, the whole situation with Clay's contract last season and the possibility of him getting an extension, I think that weighed on him, and therefore it weighed on the locker room a little bit. Now, Kuminga's in a similar situation, but also different in the fact that Kuminga cannot get a contract until restricted free agency now, as Clay last season was eligible to get an extension at any point throughout the season. And so the fact that he could get that deal at any point meant it was an ongoing storyline. Now Kuminga, his storyline is more so, okay, how is he playing? And therefore, how does that equate to his value come free agency? Because he can't get a deal right now. And so that's a little bit of an important difference between those two situations. And I do think like that Clay situation was a bit of a distraction and probably hurt the team a little bit. So as much as Clay is my favorite player of all time, I love that man. I do actually agree with you that in terms of locker room presence, Buddy is probably better than Clay was last season. But, that's just from the outside looking in. I can't say that categorically. None of us can say that categorically. But you see, Buddy and Steph have this thing on the sidelines where those guys are laughing and joking, and Buddy seems like a comedian, really. And that bodes well. And the vibes around the Warriors are really good right now. And it was interesting, Steve said in his post-game presser there half an hour ago that there's something about good vibes and good karma. Like he mentioned good karma about the Warriors right now, which has not necessarily been the case recently, given some of the stuff going on with Draymond and whatever else. But other than that, we've been going for over 36 minutes. I'll finish it up there. Warriors playing the Wizards on Monday. I'll probably be back for a post-game live. Will I do a preview episode? Maybe. We'll wait and see. I'm not sure what I've got planned tomorrow. I've got a mate going, leaving Australia for Canada tomorrow morning. That's Monday morning Australian time. So I'm going out for a few drinks to send him off tonight. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to having a few drinks as well to celebrate the Warriors beating the Rockets 127-121. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for tuning in, for those of you on the live stream and to those of you that have commented as well. And thanks to the others as well who are checking this out post the live stream, whether it be on YouTube or in your podcast feed. Other than that, guys, thank you very much again, and have a great rest of your weekend.